We have about 25 or 30 minutes for questions for our panelists to pick up on anything from their presentations or continue some of the themes that Liza opened earlier. Lindsay.
I was wondering if it's possible for anybody to be too young to be initiated. How does that happen?
No. I haven't initiated anyone that young, but one of my elders has actually initiated a baby in a stroller, who's unable to even sit where you're supposed to sit to be initiated because it was necessary. Okay, that's not norm, that's not usual, but usually Orisha says through divination when someone should be initiated and if someone should be initiated. And so if it's divine and you're 97, and we're not dragging you, screaming in the room, but if you say, okay, I'll do this, Orisha said, then you will get initiated at 97. And if you're 3 and it says you should be initiated, yes, you're initiated. It was said when I was initiated that all of my children needed to be initiated. And they were done at varying ages based on when we could get them to say yes and when money allowed also, because it's not always cheap.
So more about the process of initiation? The process of initiation,
usually it is, your head is marked, okay, usually by someone in Tony's position. He's a priest of Ifa, he's a Babalao. And in my house, you are taken to the Babalao and he will mark your head. He will say, he will divine which Orisha is asking for your head, okay? And once that's determined, which Orisha is asking for your head, then the process of being initiated begins. Usually, you already have alekis, which is basic to, I want to be in this group. It's kind of like saying, I want to join your church. That's when you have alekis. You don't, and that's, and I can say that very simply as my godbrother says it. He says, beads in the bath. Okay, that's basic. You now have some alekis, good. You count yourself in the group. But you are still considered any Leo, that's someone who does not know the secrets, who is not inside of, you cannot be inside the initiation room. Once your head is marked and it is that you're going to be initiated, your godparent you already have a godparent, your second godparent is chosen, okay? And that also has to be divined, okay? It's not, we like her, I like her, she's nice. Okay, she's my friend. Sometimes is hard because you may have had an initial second godparent and that changes when your head is marked, either because certain Orishas cannot work in the same place, or because that person, Orisha is saying that person is not for you. It's not the person who should lead you down the spiritual path. After that is decided, then clothes are made, herbs are picked, and there is a ceremony that is private to only those who have been initiated. In the Yoruba tradition, you may not see what you do not have. Okay, so I'm trying to see how much I can say without giving away the actual ceremony, but it is a 7-day ceremony. We have not abbreviated the ceremony here. It is 7 days. There's a beautiful throne built, and you will spend 7 days on that throne. You only leave it, and that is with an escort, to go to the bathroom and to be bathed, and your baby. A new initiate is a baby. Actually, you are married to the Orisha. Yawo means bride. And even if you're male, it still means bride. You are married to the Orisha, and so your Ajubona is the person who is there for you every day, who cares for you, who bathes you, who cooks all your meals, unless other people, priests come. Nowadays we have enough people, so other people come. You are fed, you are clothed every day by those people who are also initiates. And you do stay 7 days there. So you have to get off from your job. Yes, you do, for those 7 days. For many Orishas, like Oya, there are also ebos that happen prior to this ceremony, okay, that you have to do. Like I know I had to do 9 days of abodes prior to that. And those are also divined. They're not, it's not like there's one set of them. Everything in Yoruba tradition is divined. It's either divined with the cowries, like she was talking, the cowrie shells, or it's divined by a Babalawo who uses some other items, okay? After that dividing, you follow those instructions.
Can you say something about initiation in Vodou? And also the question we started with, I think, is really interesting. Is there a certain age when people are initiated?
Je crois que les différents dans Asian Vodou.
Slightly different in Asian Vodou.
Nous pas initié Timonio.
We don't initiate children.
But nous présenter.
We present the children to those spirits.
C'est pas le même genre que pour initier et faire.
The process is not the same as the initiation process itself as done in
Vous faire connaissance avec l'esprit, vous faire esprit, on est que vous là, le Seigneur l'a donné pour initier.
Yeah, you present them to the spirits and let the spirit acknowledge them, but you do not initiate them.
Ok, même grand monde, vous pas initié comme ça tout.
And even adults are not initiated in the same way.
Vous suivez l'idée, est-ce que vous préparez pour initier?
They kind of follow you and have exchanges with you to figure out whether you're ready to be initiated.
Even même pour initier, c'est 3 initiations bien.
Even when you're ready to be initiated, there are 3 levels of initiations.
Il y a un premier level que vous présentez immédiatement.
The first level you get presented just like the kids.
Deuxième level là, il va avoir un secret que il va pas répéter dans ça là.
The second level you will receive a couple of secrets that he's not, you will not be divulging in the room.
And the third one, you become a voodoo priest, full priest.
And the third level you will become a voodoo priest or priestess.
Oh yes.
Okay. But I must also add that in the Haitian practice, and correct me if I'm wrong, initiation does occur, but it's mostly reclamation. The Lois say, I am coming to this being. You are reclaiming. But and then for those of us who are not fortunate enough to be reclaimed, because it's supposed to, it's an honor. The spirit says, I want to cohabitate spiritually and humanly with you. And for those people who do not have that, who haven't been selected or entered that special relationship, they go to initiation process, and as God explained, but it's not as common.
Baptiste là, si que on m'a réclamé, on va le faire dans la vie.
See you right now?
Yeah, il va quitter ça, il va.
Or someone who's not been reclaiming, and I think reclaiming is the best way I can translate that.
Reclaim.
Because I called on.
Reclaim.
Called
Say
on.
more like if the spirits are claiming someone from their side, saying we want you in a relationship with us, how does that person know? Like, how does that come out to the person, that call, you know, or that tug?
Okay. By your dream,
Through dreams.
by your space, if you go to the ceremony, you can feel when they sing or they sing halfway, you feel the feeling in you. You can the feeling come in you. Now you know that's Loa particularly affiliated.
And they can literally mount in a coordination, which is how it commonly happens. You'll be in a ceremony, dressing white, talking fancy French or English, and then the next thing you know, you go into trance based on the drumming, the gods that is being interpolated, And then that's one way also of knowing that you are an interest for that spirit.
Pour l'autre gens, au cas où si vous n'avez réclamé, c'est que del film initié, irrité et profondément, il va tomber.
And then another, Gawa mentioned that one way you can tell that someone has been reclaiming or claimed or, I don't know, entered special engagement with the spirit is that when they get initiated, eventually they stay with the practice, they learn more. But other people who may do it lightly or, I don't know, for religious, spiritual curiosity may not necessarily remain deeply involved after initiation.
There was another, Brandon, I think you had.
Yeah, it was a question actually that I briefly asked Isoke and Liza before about, it has to do with kind of youth. And I teach at a Catholic high school, and I know for a lot of second generation, third generation youth growing up, even within the Catholic faith, there's a secularization pull. And I wasn't sure if there was a kind of formal process of education in some way. If there's mentorship within either Voodoo or Yoruba.
How to raise and educate. It's okay, maybe you, I know you
Well,
involved in the Society of Young Men and Women.
Yeah, we have something called the Egbe. Egbe is a group of club, a group of people that are the same in some way. So we have Egbe Iwa Odo Punri, Egbe Iwa Odo Niri, Society of Children with Honor. And I happen to work with them. That is a group of, they don't have to be Yoruba, but it is really a rites of passage organization founded by Oloriwa, who is a priest of Obatala. And it began as we want to help our kids understand what this is that we're doing, okay? You don't have to be initiated. You don't even have to be Yoruba to be in this group, but we want you as a youth in the world to understand when you pass those houses and you hear those drummings, or you come in and you notice people being mounted or possessed or synchronized with the Orisha, what is going on, why is that happening, and then how to conduct yourself as a youth growing up in the world, in whatever religion or whatever spiritual practice you have. So that's one thing, and that's rather new for us. It's actually new in the Orisha community. We have a lot of trouble explaining it, especially to the Latino part of our community, because a lot of them don't understand what is this Egbe. It's not the Egbe Oshun or the Egbe Oya. It's not the group of people who are initiated already and are following a particular priest. What is this group? We don't get it. And the children themselves, initiated and not initiated, sometimes don't get it. My son was just getting ready to go to college when Oloriwa founded it, and I said, you have to be in this Egbe. And he said, I already made Ocha. You want me to do something else? Another thing I have to do? I said, it's not the same. You're not being initiated again. It's a learning place. They actually study people that Tony probably studied 40 years ago or knew, but people are, there's no history from inside the community that the kids are learning about. Like, they don't know who initiated their godparents, and who in Cuba or Puerto Rico was your ancestor in Orisha. So that kind of thing is even taught. They have to do research on it, and all of the, it's a way of teaching them, not necessarily of initiating them or even asking them to be initiates. Lots of them, though, we've had several kids who have come to the religion after being in this group. And we have several who have not.
So,
I think we need to mention also, in Haiti, the difference is that the voodoo culture is lived every day.
Yeah.
Like many of the practices that I do, although I went to Catholic school, believe it or not, got a lot of meetings, but my community in my home life was completely voodoo. Which means I get up, I see what my parents do, what my mom do, what my grandmother do, what the women and men do, and I came to the United States in 1981. My mom died in 1989. Little that I know, after my mom died, in memory of my mother, I started doing certain things. And that's how, that's how we came back. And I get deeper into the practice. And I raised a child born in America who is now more knowledgeable about it, without having, it's just because you live it every day. It's a libation. At my front door, anybody who comes in always see that I have so on and so forth. And believe it or not, my mom knew a cent. A cent is like something that you can do to make things right. I never done it. My daughter was in high school and I opened her space and I realized that she had done it. It fucking freaked me out. I called her and said, why did you do this? She said, well, so-and-so was bothering me. I needed to calm her down. This is how I guess it can pass down. It's because it's lived in the house. It's open and the education happened in those ways. So I guess it's, yeah.
You had a question, Henry?
Well, yeah, and I wondered if you want to get into this just because Isoke mentioned that, not to put anyone as the representative of one branch or another, but Isoke mentioned that, some people in the Latino, Cuban and Puerto Rican side of La Ocha were not as comfortable with this society of young men, young women of character. And I don't know, but can you talk about in the sort of Cuban and Puerto Rican communities, how people think about this transmission across generations, working with young people?
Well, you said the key word, generation. Number one. Number two, generalizations get kind of hairy. I'm an Afro-Puerto Rican, New Yorker, and I relate to everybody. And I've been part of the evolution of the tradition for the last 40 years. So even my Cuban elders, who are, their African spirituality is so strong, but they'll call Oshun la Caridad del Cobre. That's okay, and it's still, because it's cultural. It's cultural. So what's needed is communication. We go back to operational language again, and in promotion. Because, let's say in the Puerto Rican community in New York, there's a need for folks to sit down and say, our kids are being railroaded to these penal institutions. Our young men on the news, it's always African American and Latino, African American, Latino. We marginalize and demonize our young men. Who's walking down the streets with their pants falling down? See? So, here's a society, here's a group that's better than a gang, it's better than the Crips, the Nietas, of the Latin Kings. Maybe some promotion needs to be done in Spanish in some cases. A lot of Puerto Ricans in New York English dominant. So it's a matter of promotion. I wanted to touch upon something else that I noticed a curiosity about initiation. American secular culture doesn't have initiation, even puberty rites for young men. The Jewish culture has it, bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah. See? There's a need for initiation rites of some type that's not secular, and it has to have a spiritual component. That's why this society is hungry for, what do they do? Initiation. See, all initiation is the beginning of something. You begin your journey, because it's not an end all. I'm still evolving. You go to Ifa, there's more? Yeah, there's more right until you go to the next level. You know where the next level is, right? Yeah, so initiation is the beginning. Ordination is another way we can look at this. So to get back to the original question, there's a need for conversation. There's a need to promote the Egbe for Okumiho Durim, right? Didn't work with all the way up when that was embryonic. There's a need to promote promote.
Other questions?
Could I just follow up? What ages are you educating? When does this take
The
place?
Egg Bay is labeled as a rites of passage group, so it starts at 13. 13 to 21 is when we take them in. And we do now, yes, it's an important age. And we do now have all of our materials go out in both English and Spanish so that we can pull from that community. And, you know, we're not separate from them. It's just a communication. I agree with Tony that it's a communication thing that needs to happen and be promoted and talked more about. The other thing that was
like meet once a week or?
We meet the first and the third Sundays. They start in May and they go from May to May. It's a year. And they meet the first and the third Sundays. Okay. And what's so interesting is the issue that he spoke of is actually one of the issues that they have classes, they have teaching about the whole thing with the look of them, with the pants and everything. We actually had, Batala priests come in and actually speak to them on that level and how that came to be a style. Okay, so every month has a particular theme, and within that theme, they range from sexuality to economics, to how to take care of yourself. And that's why it's general. And it does have to have a spiritual base. We explained to them in the beginning, you do not have to be Yoruba, but any prayers said here, any things that are going to happen here are all going to be Yoruba based. Okay? And we had a young man who struggled with one of the ceremonies when it was actually a sacrifice near the end, because he was practicing, he was Buddhist. And so, yes, he was very, very, very upset. And so we've had to change some of our conversation in the beginning to prepare people who are not necessarily Yoruba. We also had an issue with one of my grandsons, my husband's grandson, who is rather large. And one of the things that they do when they're leaving is they also now have another very special spiritual bath. And a bath which you have to do what? Take off your clothes. And he, for a boy who's 14, when has a boy of 14 been nude? Only in a room with men, but still, when have they been nude if they're not really like a sports guy and they do a lot of sports or whatever? They haven't really been nude in front of anyone except themselves, especially if they're heavy. And he had we had to have some elders and some other people who were big literally come and talk to him. So it is a group that deals with more than just spirit. It deals with spirit and what's going on with you between 13 and 21.
En Haïti, les t-shirts différents parce que depuis la vente, nous commençons à payer.
Indeed, it's slightly different because from the womb, the kid starts already receiving that coverage.
You cherchez feuille sur un nom spirituel.
They would take leaves, they would look for leaves in the name of certain spirits and bend the mother, in the child in the womb. So the initiation or the rites of passage process begin
even in the
womb and it's slightly different.
And that's the advantage to being in a culture as opposed to, I'm just placed here. I could be anything. I'm getting ready to initiate someone in September who is actually first generation Ghanaian. Now, her family is actually Christian, and her mother is a little upset. I should say a little, that's definitely not the word, because she's going to be initiated Yoruba, and her mother's like, if you were going to go towards a traditional religion, why aren't you going towards Akan, which is the traditional African kind of based religion that comes out of Ghana. So she's not understanding anything. But as an African American, hey, I didn't get to trace my roots back to the exact spot where my folks were from and know which one I should be. And they didn't bathe anybody for me. And then I didn't even have a family tradition, like Tony, of an aunt who was a spiritualist. So it was called Eenie, Meenie, Mickey Mouse, Pick. Literally, almost, it feels that way. So our kids don't have that either. Okay, and because many of them now don't even have like the grandmother who said, this is what we are, we're gonna go to church on Sunday or something. They don't even have that. So that's one of the things, that and language are two of the things that I feel were most taken from me historically by being here.
And that's one of the things we say to Haitian youngsters. The fact that Haiti emerged out of the colonial slavery experience with its own language, be proud of that. With its own cultural practice, be proud of that. And for achieving the very first human rights triumphant history, be proud of that. And use those legacy to construct yourself better, to build better human being, and in turn build a better community. And we're sorry that our brothers and sisters were so scattered and that we on that island, on that piece of land, managed to resist and contest and arrive and then that allowed us to keep the practices a little bit much closer to the homeland. But we're happy that you are reconstructing your identity.
C'est pas seulement ben maman tout you parler à même dans
While in the home, they would communicate with the child as well, like the Haitian practice. There are things being passed on.
Time probably for one more question. I hate to say it. One or two more. Roger, did you have
I had a quick question. I saw some footage on visiting Souvenance, and I was just wondering if there are any other, special locations, not just in the spurred out community, but something that a devotee would go back to and visit, a pilgrimage or some central location other than Souvenance.
Great question.
That's very good.
And can I go to
Pourquoi les surveillances mais quelle autre place la Coubadio?
Yes, there are other places. One of them is La
Coubadio and Jamel.
Sucre is where
La Coubadio.
Sucre is also in Kunayi and La
That's like
Coubadio.
Congo and Souvenance is Rada. That's the big difference.
Is there a site for Pedro?
Well, Congo is Pedro.
Oh, thank you, teacher. Congo is Pedro, yeah. I haven't been to none neither. I've been to Ville-Bonheur, which is also a sacred place, but it's not personal.
I'm embarrassed I'm forgetting the name. I should know this. Liza will kick my butt later. But the waterfall. Sodo, yeah. Can you tell them a little bit about the pilgrimage there?
I was so little, like, I'm not going to venture, but and then I went to Saint-Yves as well, which is another spiritual site.
So do Haitians in the U.S. Try as much as they can to go back to Haiti to visit these sites?
Okay.
Yes.
What I know in Sodo, before the saint, like Mokamed, that was the order to have the spirit. But the Catholic people put the saint plaques, the saint de guérison for the people. But really, the spirit is on the water, it's not on the church.
And maybe my last comment, because I know we're out of time. I think there are this idea that Haitian voodoo is syncretic, which means it has element of Freemasonry, element of Catholicism. It doesn't fundamentally change the religion, the incoming of these aspects. In fact, I'm doing research on and really labeling these things as intertextuality. How text communicates with text, how things interact and interface with each other, but both the Masonry and Catholicism presence, or their objects presence, or certain things that are appropriated by voodoo are example of how we as a people we communicate and we borrow from each other. Whether it's language.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
Are you on the
I know they do a lot of comparing comparison. The religion come from Africa anyway, but Batala, I know from the voodoo religion, he's the man of war. I wanted to know if it means the same thing.
Obatala?
Yeah, Obatala.
It depends on which road of Obatala. You know, every road of Obatala. So if you were thinking a Jagana, yes, he could be warlike. But normally Obatala is the Orisha that's given, and Tony can say more about him, he's the crown priest of Obatala. He's given the highest praise, meaning he's the one who holds our heads in his hand. Okay? He's the Orisha of the white cloth. He's the Orisha that is told, don't go out and stain yourself. But as I learn more and more about Obatala, in this tradition, with the whole concept of roads and remember that aspect of God being so big that there's so many parts that you can actually have more than one Obatala. I have four. I have four. And I'm learning more about Obatala and you continue to grow, like they were talking about levels, where you continue to grow and receive things, and there are ceremonies that bring you more in. I am also a horse, meaning I'm also someone who gets mounted, right. So that's another level.
I know that. Right.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, I'm always going to be a student, right. Okay? There are always going to be people like Tony who are helping me know more, and then because Orisha also helps me know more. So I don't know if I would want to label Obatala as just one line. Yeah.
We're so out of time, but Tony, if you wanted to add maybe 1 or 2 minutes about Obatala, as it's okay.
Very, very appropriate. Obatala, we say Obatala's Ibikeji Orokumare. That's God Almighty's deputy on one side, Orumela's Ibikeji Orokumare, deputy on the other side. Why? If we haven't noticed, the universe is a large, vast operation. God Almighty needs help. Here we are, the third rock from the sun, Mother Earth, blue green planet. In the scheme of things, we're microscopic. So our African spirituality, I think corporations borrowed from us. The organizational chart of any corporation, who's at the top, the CEO, then you have levels, the VPs, the AVPs, the AAVPs, the AAAAVPs, you get my drift, right? That's how we look at the universe.
I like how you said that, because someone explained to me the spirits, God is the brain, and the deities is just different lungs working in there to get
CPU, CEO, see, and aspects of Olodumare or the Orisha. The two deputies, Obatala on one side, Orumela on the other. Why is Obatala important for everybody here? Obatala runs the factory that creates our head. Before we come into incarnation, we believe in reincarnation. Our spirit, the microscopic manifestation of God Almighty is in here. And Obatala's in charge. He runs the factory that fashions and molds our heads. So you don't have to be a part of our tradition. No, we're all children by default of Obatala. And Obatala has different flavors, different manifestations. My Obatala is a warrior. In my incarnation, I can't be Mr. Pillsbury no more. My work is of a warrior. See? To bring our tradition to the next level in venues like this, I have to be very proactive with the way I speak. Obatala Ajaguna is a warrior. He's the Shango of all the Obatalas. See? Does that help?
Yeah.
I know this is not way over, so I know. Let me do this real quick. Within voodoo, the pantheon of voodoo nations, we have a Yoruba figurehead, Ogu. And within the Ogu family, there's Ogu Batala, there's Ogu Shango, there's Ogu Badagui, there's hundreds of them. Yeah, Ogu Farai. But that's why he says it's the god of war, because Ogu is the god of war. And so Batala, within that context, is work, you know, and that's the Aruba side of it. They still respect, and I'm sure a fair amount of slaves came from the Aruba culture, where it was more dominant in Cuba and Puerto Rico. It's still there in Aruba as well.
Can I just say?
Breaks my heart. Can I possibly say no?
Yes.
Am I allowed to say
I just want to remind you that when you're saying a sentence about how we got here, you can't say a lot of slaves came. No slaves came.
Right.
People were enslaved.
Right.
Like you didn't go there and pick up slaves. You picked up Africans and enslaved them. So, and that's a very important thing when you're talking to children. Okay, you don't want them to think that there was just a bunch of slaves waiting there for somebody to come. No, you came enslaved. So we have to make sure that, as Tony said, we have to pay attention to language.
Operational
Okay?
language.
Yeah, we have to make sure our language changes. So
Thank
we can
you, everyone.